Thank you for joining us bright and early. I know it can be hard to wake up sometimes after fun crypto events, so it's great to see you. My name's Tekin Salimi. I'm the founder and general partner of a fund called DAO5. And today we're going to have a really interesting discussion about users. I think users are arguably the most important sector or subsection within crypto and realizing this future of a crypto native future that we all are working towards at some level. And as we dive into this, I'd like to turn over the mic to our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves and maybe tell us a little bit about their projects.
Hello everyone, my name is Hongfei. I'm the founder of NEO. NEO is the first public blockchain to start from China. And now we know that doing crypto business in China is probably not completely legal. So I moved to Singapore last year. And during the journey of the whole crypto sphere, I have experienced different terminologies to describe our industry, from Bitcoin industry to the cryptocurrency, to the coin industry, and then cryptocurrency, and then blockchain. And nowadays we call ourselves Web3 entrepreneurs. Let's talk about Web3 today. Yeah.
Oh, I'm good. Hey everyone, I'm Eunice. I'm co-founder and COO of Monad Labs. Monad is a new EVM-compatible L1. We are focused on performance and accelerating Ethereum through introducing superscalar pipelining to the entire tech stack. A little bit about myself. I met my two co-founders, Keone and James, throughout Keone, from my undergrad years at MIT, I studied computer science, moved to New York to work on Wall Street, met James through several friends, including Keone, who worked at Jump Trading. I took a little bit of a detour away from the tech industry to work in restaurants for a little bit. So if you guys are from New York and know of Jean-Georges, I was in the back of house working in the kitchen for a little bit just before the pandemic hit. And then the pandemic hit, so I was forced to kind of rethink a couple of professional career choices and found my way into crypto in early 2021. And when I had the opportunity to join Keone and James to build Monad, it seemed like a no-brainer. So Monad is, we started in March of 2022, and I'm really excited to be here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mance Harmon. I'm the co-founder with Dr. Lehman Baird of Hedera Hashgraph. I'm also now the co-CEO of Swirlds Labs. Swirlds Labs is responsible for developing the software that Hedera uses. Hedera is one of the leading layer 1 protocols out there. I think what's notable about it is not just the technology, which is Hashgraph, that maximizes performance and security simultaneously, objectively. It achieves the theoretical limit of what can be achieved in terms of security, something called asynchronous Byzantine fault tolerance, while simultaneously maximizing the performance, which has profound impact on the scope and scale of use cases that can be used on the platform. That's half the story. The other half is the governance model. So Hedera governance model, it's governed, operated by a collection of the world's largest organizations. These are brands like Google and Boeing and IBM and Nomura in Japan and LG and some universities. They're cross category, so it's not a bunch of banks or tech giants. So they're cross industry and they're geo-distributed. They are Hedera. They are the governing body of Hedera. They run the network for Hedera, and it's focused on use cases that would be relevant to that caliber of organization.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, one of the very interesting observations about this panel is we have three very different projects, all from kind of different points in time in the history of crypto, but all working towards this common goal of growing the user base and user acquisition, bringing more people into decentralized networks. So I think the first thing we'll talk about is just the total, like a bird's eye view of the user universe within crypto today. there was a report that came out, I believe, last week from Henley and Partners that basically said that the total user base of crypto today in the world is something like 425 million people. So for those in crypto a long time, there's been significant growth here. But at the same time, I think we can recognize there's a long way to go for this industry to rival a company like Facebook, for instance, that has over 3 billion users today. I'd like to hear from each panelist about what do you guys think is the biggest barrier to growing the total number of users in crypto today, say another 10x?
I think 425 million is already a lot. My personal perspective of the mass adoption of Web3 is probably different from others. I think at this stage, at this moment, Web3 is probably not for everyone. We probably shouldn't be focusing, devoting all our efforts to try to fulfill the dream, the goal of mass adoption today or next year or the year after next year. I think there's a simple equation. Action equals motivation minus resistance. To drive mass adoption, we need to have a scenario that users have a very strong motivation to use Web3. I haven't yet to see it in a large scale. In some minor scenarios, Web3 applications are definitely better than Web2. For example, internet global payment. It's difficult for some website to work, to sign up with Visa or MasterCard. And in many cases, the barrier is still very high. I think we need to have a really easy and simple to use wallet to onboard Web3 users. Today, the friction is really high. If you want to buy crypto from using your credit card, it will cost you somewhere between 4 to 12% of all the money. And it's also very prone to hack. So it's difficult for non-tech savvy users to maintain their wallet safely. So my advice, or myself, what I myself is doing is to service for those people who are really concerned about privacy, really concerned about censorship resistance, really concerned about the composability, the openness of the network. That's the audience that I'm working for.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Hongfei. Like, we need actual applications that touch upon the frustrations that users have today. And I think we're just at the start of seeing some of those applications come to life. To direct back to the questions that you brought up, Tekin, I also think that 425 million users in crypto is probably largely only within the centralized exchange space. Like, I have some doubts that all 425 are transacting on chain. And so that's probably one of the first hurdles, like getting people who are just transacting strictly off-chain in centralized exchanges to on-chain behaviors. So from that, I think there's like two primary frictions, the first of which is the UI UX component. Like, it's no surprise that the barriers to entry from getting from the credit card phase to like having crypto in your own wallet, there's just a lot of steps that are in place there. And then secondly is the technology. So if we were to, I think I also saw a metric with Facebook that there's around 4 million likes per minute. So if we break it down to seconds, since we love a per second metric, that's like 67,000 likes per second. If we translate that to transactions, 67,000 transactions per second is beyond what a lot of blockchains can support on an average basis. So that's another area that I think we as industry leaders need to tackle, the infra tech itself.
Well, I think it's a combination of factors, some of which have already been touched on. User experience has to improve. User experience is one of the largest hindrances to mass adoption, in my opinion. That's just one factor among many. Another one is that the risk profile of using a wallet has to improve as well. I mean, most people expect there to be a safety net for everything. And when it comes to self-custody of crypto, there rarely is a good safety net. If you lose your keys, you're kind of out of luck. And so we're focusing a lot in Hedera and in Swirlds Labs on something that we're calling Decentralized Recovery, DREC for short. And it's a way in which we can ensure that if a user loses their phone, they can recover those keys without having the risks that are typically associated with having a custodian of those keys, and do it in a decentralized way. So if there's interest in there, just go to the website and you'll see information there. So we think that we have to make it more secure from the end user's perspective as it relates to being a self-custody of keys. We have to improve the user experience dramatically, and then we have to ultimately get regulatory clarity. Now, what's that got to do with the users themselves? Once there's regulatory clarity in place, then it makes it possible for really large organizations that bring huge numbers of users to the platforms to feel comfortable in going to market with their solutions. And our platform is focused on those very large enterprise or very large consumer-focused use cases where there can be many, many millions of people onboarded with a single application, but the regulatory environment plays a huge role in the drag of the adoption of those types of solutions at the enterprise level. And so it's a whole combination of factors, but they're all being worked. And I'm optimistic that in the relative near term, we've been doing this for a lot of years now, right? And I don't think we're going to go another 10 years without seeing that kind of adoption.
Terrific. Very good points from all the panelists. I feel like there's no shortage of problems that we have to solve before onboarding the next 10x users or the next few billion. Definitely idiot-proofing crypto. There has to be good social recovery. It has to be something that like your grandma could use without understanding how it works underneath the hood, but also expanding the use cases that people would want to use crypto for. So yeah, thank you for those observations. I think maybe now to double-click on each of your projects, could you tell us a little bit about what your target user base or what your addressable market is in terms of users? So that could mean things like, is there an average user in terms of demographics that you go after? Is there a specific use case you're trying to enable and win? And maybe let's answer this one in opposite order this time, starting with Mance.
Sure. So there's not a specific use case that we're focused on. We are truly a general purpose public network. We're not necessarily known for a given vertical use case. What we are known for is enterprise and very large consumer focused use cases across the board. So I mentioned the Governing Council. The Governing Council, today I think we're 29 or 30 strong of those types of organizations that I mentioned earlier. And they were intentionally chosen to be cross-industry. Like I said, it's not a bunch of banks. We're not just focused on financial services. Although we have a number of banks on the platform that are governors of the network, and they care about stablecoins and DeFi and cross-border payments, et cetera, et cetera. What we are focused on is enabling developers to scale to really high numbers of transactions in their solutions at ultra low cost. The average cost per transaction is a penny of a penny, so a tenth of a cent USD, and it's denominated in fiat. So there is no variation in the cost per transaction based on the value of the underlying crypto asset, that being HBAR in our case, HBAR. So we have built a system, a network and an ecosystem that is focused on enterprise-grade capability and solution and solving the fundamental problems that developers and entrepreneurs of all flavors care about? How do they predict what their cost of goods is going to be for the use of the network, for example? But you know, the range of use cases is really quite broad, and we have the good fortune of being in a position where many of those large-scale use cases are already in the market on the platform today. We're processing, on average, about 1,000 transactions per second. I don't know where we are today, but I think we've crossed 19 billion transactions in total. There's no other layer 1 out there that even comes close. And so it's meant to be a solution that can handle the biggest and most important use cases.
For Monad, I think our primary users are developers as well as the community. And we're hopeful to have an ecosystem of excited developers who are enabled by some of the existing infrastructure that's already in place from the Ethereum community, since we are EVM compatible, to build applications that can be deployed on a high-performance chain like Monad for the betterment of the community. Like, you know, developers build applications that are exciting. The community members benefit from it. I think I lost my train of thought. 1 second. Can you prime me about the question again? I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Just yeah, what is the kind of the target demographics or target use cases of your user base?
Yeah, so I think day one, high fidelity DeFi is really where we're seeing a lot of opportunity. DeFi is a really big vertical within the space. And there's a lot of areas in which we can start reducing the gaps between the experience that you see within some traditional markets, some traditional systems such as like central limit order books versus on-chain central limit order books. Right now, there's an insane amount of slippage that on-chain users see strictly because of the cost and timing of publishing on-chain data. So some approaches have been to have like a hybrid on-chain, off-chain model, and solutions are struggling to find on-chain only central limit order book models, and that's something that we believe Monad is going to be able to support. And then beyond that, just like Mance and HBAR, Monad is also built to be a general purpose blockchain, so we're hopeful to see an ecosystem that touches and captures applications across all verticals, and maybe one day verticals that don't even exist yet today.
Okay, my turn. I'm currently doing 2 things. The first is definitely Neo. Neo used to use a complete different tech stack comparing to Ethereum. We have our own programming language, we have our own VM, we have everything. The address format is different, the toolchain is different. So we're trying to prove that we have a better system, but definitely it turns out that Ethereum has our EVM-based smart contract system. Now is the most prevailing smart contract system. So this year, we finally decided we should build a EVM compatible layer 2 for Neo, so the EVM developers can join our ecosystem. And the main focus for us to differentiate ourselves is we are focusing on solving the MEV problem, or most specifically, a bad MEV problem like front running. Because we have a unique consensus mechanism called delegated BFT, we have the technical foundation for transactions to be encrypted in the first place, in the first block, and then to be reviewed in the second block. That's basically the principle, the idea, how we solve the MEV problem. We've already come up with I'll say a decent solution, and we're now engineering on top of it. So that's what I do with Neo. And the second thing I'm doing starting this year is I'm building a venture studio to build more startups in the crypto space, or also maybe a little bit in the AI space. So we'll be focusing on 2 Ds. One is digital, the other is disruptive. As long as a business is digital and disruptive, we are very interested. For example, there is one of my colleagues sitting in the audience. He is building a MPC-based wallet. I think MPC wallet has a huge potential to simplify the user experience, the security that today the Web3 users are facing today. We're also thinking about how to build a layer 2 system for the Bitcoin ecosystem, which is a hot topic recently. And other things like, I'm also very interested in on-ramp, off-ramp. I yet to see a good solution for users to do OTC or fiat to crypto, crypto to fiat transaction very smoothly, low cost. I haven't seen that. So I'm also working on a project to doing that.
Okay, terrific. 3 very different answers, different use cases we're going after. It always leads to a good discussion. One thing that's interesting about crypto is at some level, representing different blockchain ecosystems, representing different layer 1s, you are in competition with one another in terms of this like zero-sum idea of you want TVL that another platform doesn't have, or you're trying to acquire users from another ecosystem. But at the same time, fundamentally, we're all very much on the same team. And what we're competing with is both the legacy financial system and I suppose like centralized network infrastructure that it forms the internet today, that obviously leads to problems like censorship resistance, amongst other things. So asking each user to be an idealist again, like remembering that first time you got into crypto, what do you think are the most important value propositions to users, both in terms of builders and everyday people, that like your pitch or your call to action for them to use decentralized infrastructure instead of the legacy system? So a little bit of a broad idealist question, but it's always fun to go back to first principles. And maybe Eunice, we'll start with you, if you're up for it.
All right, yeah. Yeah, I think when it comes down to it, again, like we need to be user-centric and user-focused. So what we need is a platform, what we need is infrastructure in general to support like applications that do require performance. And so kind of going back to what I mentioned before, Monad is introducing superscalar pipelining across different areas of our tech stack. And so I'll just go through that briefly because I think this is important in understanding how Monad specifically is going about providing additional like execution capacity on our blockchain. So the first layer is within block proposal itself. We're pipelining the consensus mechanism. The second piece is staging block consensus from execution. The third being pipelining transaction execution via optimistic parallel execution, and also pipelining state access with a new custom state backend that is really specifically performant in retrieval and storage of Merkle tree data. All of that in place allows us to drive closer to an efficient frontier with where hardware capabilities are, and just pushing the bounds of I'm missing the words here, but expanding the bounds of what is possible on chain.
Hongfei, do you want to go first?
I think payment is probably the gateway drug, the red pill for the ordinary users to experience the power of Web3. Once you used like USDC or USDT to pay someone in another place in the world in seconds, the experience you will never forget. And also, I think payment is a meaningful action that occurs every day in your everyday life. So I'm thinking that we need to have a really good wallet to onboard users, to lower their friction or the cost for them to buy their first crypto. and they encourage them to use stablecoin or cryptos to pay others or to transfer money to others. These days, I do not pay my employee or my colleagues with any fiat. Everything is crypto based, and it's a nightmare before I shifted to pay them in cryptos, and now life is much easier for me. Yeah. So I think payment is definitely the the thing we need to pursue.
So I have several thoughts. One, I do think that the most important, largest use cases are going to be multi-platformed, right? So in some sense, yes, the layer ones are competing with each other. It's also the case that when it comes to deployment of the largest solutions, it's not going to be on a single layer one. It's going to be cross-platform just because whomever it is that's going to market with that solution can't take the risk of being bound to a single layer one platform. So we're going to be cooperating for a long time to come. And at maturity, there are going to be half a dozen or so layer ones that are all working together for those solutions. Then outside of that, I think that the migration from sort of Web 2.0 to Web 3.0 is going to happen when the end users don't even know that it's happening. As long as we can provide a good value prop to the companies that are building solutions in some way that it improves their top line or their bottom line, one or the other, then they're going to go to market with solutions, and success means that their end users don't even know that there's a layer one under the hood, right? It's just transparent to the user. We're plumbing. We provide plumbing in infrastructure. We shouldn't be thought of. If you have to think about us, it's going badly. It's not working, right? That's a pothole in the road. You don't want to think about it. And so I think that when it comes to retail use cases, then the user, of course, is paramount. And you got to think deeply about the user experience and what the value prop is. But I expect that the real adoption doesn't happen there. It happens behind the scenes in the large-scale solutions that are going to market by the existing large-scale Web 2.0 players, and you know, whether that be in ad tech or in rewards, or it could be preventing double spends, enabling new categories of solutions like preventing the double spends of carbon credits and offsets. It's a natural application of the tech. So it's that where I think that we move from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0.
Okay, very insightful. Thank you for that. To shift gears a little bit, we're going to talk about everyone's favorite topic, regulation. And I think it's safe to say the past year there's been a lot of regulatory uncertainty and kind of regulatory enforcement taking place throughout the industry. I'm interested in, I guess the risk we have as a space is if we don't take proactive measures to self-regulate or just ensure best compliance and best behavior within our reasonable means, we open ourselves up to overreaching and potentially dangerous regulation that stifles growth and it limits our ability to operate in crypto. So I'm curious from each panelist, just philosophically, what do you think is your responsibilities or measures that you need to take in terms of ensuring good behavior within your ecosystems and projects?
Can you repeat that question?
Yeah, just what do you think are reasonable steps you need to take, if any, to ensure good behavior and kind of prevent bad fraudulent actors within your ecosystem?
I think that's a very complicated question.
It is, yeah.
With the venture studio I'm currently setting up, I think the first step we need to do is to talk a lot with our legal advisors, so they ensure that from the token design, the whole token economics from bottom up is compliant to current SEC rules, Hong Kong SFA rules, so that we will not be regarded as a security in those jurisdictions. One of the key elements is the network or the token distribution need to be very decentralized, which also echoes the ideology of blockchain, of cryptocurrencies. I think to meet those regulatory requirements and also the spirit of blockchain projects, decentralization is, or at least decentralization after a certain point is the key. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Makes sense.
So Monad is built, will be built as a censorship-resistant blockchain. So, based on that definition, anyone can participate on the network, and that includes any application being deployed on that network. So we can't necessarily stop bad actors. Like, there are bad actors. There will always be bad actors. But what we can do is educate users on how to best protect against that. And maybe that's a combination of two things. One is to introduce developers on how to write safe, robust, secure code, not take any shortcuts. And then secondly, enabling and empowering users to understand how to actually interact with Web3, from identifying how to confirm transactions using some of the wallet UIs that we have today, or however that may transition over time. So I think the biggest thing is going to be education. Like, we cannot, on a foundational level, the blockchain itself, being censorship resistant, can't prevent bad actors, but we can do our best to equip people in the ecosystem.
So we make a clear distinction between the ordering of transactions and the services, the native services that do that directly, and everything else above that text, higher up in the tech stack. We view ourselves as the equivalent of the telephone system, the networks, the cell phone networks, right? It's at that level of infrastructure that we're providing value. And so the goal for us is to ensure that that level of infrastructure is secure, and that means, as you already noted, you have to prevent civil attacks. You have to be decentralized in it's a proof of stake. For us, we're a proof of stake solution, and therefore you have to have broad decentralization of the tokens. Now, we've taken a step that is unusual in the industry in that we know who all the node operators are. We do not today allow anonymous node operators, and the reason for that is because fundamentally in a proof of stake solution there are two ways to provide security. You either know everyone that is running a node, which fundamentally eliminates the opportunity for civil attacks, or you make sure that the token, the market cap of the token is high enough and the distribution of the token is broad enough that it becomes practically impossible for a bad actor to buy up a third or more of the tokens. So we've taken the step of taking it slow. The organizations that I mentioned, the Googles and Nomoras and Deutsche Telekoms of the world, are trusted brands. It doesn't mean that we trust any single one of those organizations not to be evil, just the opposite. We trust that the group of organizations together provide the checks and balances on each other. It is a decentralized governing body, but we know who they are. And so that provides a level of security over anonymous nodes where you really don't know who has control over the simplest of actions or activities, that is just ordering the transactions in the network. So that's where we focused.
Terrific. Yeah, to both Mance and Hongfei's point, I think decentralization is such an important component of any analysis in being regulatory compliant. And Eunice, I strongly agree with the point that we have to mostly change the culture of participating in crypto, more responsibility and autonomy on the user to do your own research, but also just like the availability of better code audits, code auditing firms, just steps we can take to make the code as secure as possible. I think just changes kind of the culture of approaching the space. So we're out of time today, guys, but thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to all of our great panelists. Maybe a round of applause for them. They did a great job.